All right, so I was sitting in my office this morning and I was talking to one of my coworkers about how things are never going to change. How, and someone just asked me this in the comment section, why am I obsessed with a new car? It's not that I'm obsessed with a new car, I'm obsessed with improving the quality of my life. And it's never going to improve because hourly work was never designed to improve the lives of those who have to work for hourly wages. So you can keep chasing the idea of getting a home that you want to live in, driving a car that you want to drive, and having a relationship that you want to have. All of those things as poor people means that you have to settle for less. When it comes to your relationship, you're going to have to go out with someone that you're not physically attracted to. And the only reason that you're with them is because you need someone to share your bills with, because that $2,500 a month that you have to spend on rent for a reasonably sized apartment in a halfway decent place is something you can't afford with one income. And you have to realize that that's true. And you have to lower your standards in every aspect of life. And I'm not willing to do that. So, with that said, when I read this comment by Sir Thanks a Lot this morning, I thought it was a very neat comment. So I put it through ChatGPT. It generated a script, and I do not agree with a lot of the talking points from the script. So I just cut out the little bits and pieces that I wanted. And one of the titles that it selected was Gen Z's greatest strength is pointing out the BS in our system, because there is a lot of BS that we're forced to swallow every single time. And the myth of hard work leading to success is one of those things that every day that I go to work, someone points out the fact that you just need to work harder. And the reality is, I've been working my whole life and things have never gotten better. And some people think that, well, you just have to be patient. No, I've spent my whole life working miserable jobs that I can't stand, that I don't want to go to. I can't stand the people there. I can't stand the type of work that I have to do. And I have to believe that life isn't about having to endure the pain and suffering of trying to make a living on what I would call non living wages or the minimum wage for the proletariat. To me, even $50 an hour isn't enough anymore. $50 is the new minimum wage, because look at the cost of everything. You can't buy anything anymore with with current wages the way that they're at for most of the proletariat. I mean, if you're scraping by, like I was watching this video today on how bad housing has gotten in Canada, where they have people who are just giving up on trying to live indoors, or they're paying thousands of dollars for inadequate housing. At that point, you just give up. And most of these people are probably not going to make it. I feel like the segment of the population that is going to become homeless is just one number of the people who aren't going to survive in the next year. And it's not because they're not working. In fact, in this documentary, they pointed out that some of the people living in their cars were two people who were both working and still could not make sufficient money in order to be able to afford to buy a home or get into a decent sized apartment. What does that mean? It means the entire system is broken, and this is where Gen Z comes in. Gen Z's been saying this for years. This system, this crap system that wants to pay them nothing, isn't going to exploit them. They would rather sit at home at their parents' house and not participate in this system. And this is something that most of us are going to have to find a way to do. The Philosophical Gamer says this constantly on his channel: do anything but work. But the reality is that if we don't work, you're basically saying you want to end it. Because if you don't work, no food, no shelter, it is freezing cold outside here in Arizona. If you don't have shelter and you don't have food because you don't work, you might as well just throw yourself off a cliff at this point, because the system is there waiting for you to participate in it. And Gen Z, well, luckily enough that most of them, or I say a larger percentage than people that are from my generation. I come from a generation where your parents are ready to throw you out the second that you turned 18, or like myself, leave you on the street and never see them again. And Gen Z is not having to deal with that, at least not the way that I grew up with it. I mean, I grew up with the constant expression from my parents saying, when you're 18, you're out. And I was just like, oh my God, what can I possibly do when I'm 18 years old to generate a large enough income so that I can possibly support myself? Right now, it's nothing. No one's going to give an 18-year-old or anyone that doesn't have the 5 to 10 years of experience a decent paying job. And today, when Gen Z didn't show up for work, I was actually happy that a lot of Gen Z people, they know what's up, and they know that the corporations don't like them. They know the corporations don't want them around, and the corporations are not going to bend just because Gen Z doesn't like the rules. They don't like the dress code, they don't like the hours, they don't like the pay, they don't like the management, and they definitely don't like the type of work that they can get. So there's a lot of bitter resentment between Gen Z and any corporation because they want to bend over Gen Z and do everything that they've been doing to millennials for decades, right? This is what happens when you join the workforce. Your tighty whities fall between your ankles and the corporation takes you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And this belief that you're just going to automatically retire when you're 65, that's not going to happen. Most of us are going to work until they put us in the ground. I don't have a thin dime of savings. And when people ask you why you're not saving for retirement, the answer is simple. I live paycheck to paycheck. I'm buried in credit card debt. I'm buried in student loan debt. And my checks haven't changed in 3 years. In fact, one of my coworkers was telling me that he didn't qualify for a raise this year because he got a 25-cent raise in the spring because he was complaining to high hell that he couldn't survive on making $18 an hour. Well, guess what? Corporation don't care. So, getting into our first talking point, work hard, climb the ladder narrative has been weaponized to keep people compliant and distracted, telling people that they just have to wait. I was told that today by a coworker. It's not going to be like this forever. And I'm like, what's going to change? What is going to change in society that's going to make corporations and policymakers realize that, you know what, we haven't given the proletariat much? In fact, today, one of my coworkers was telling me that in California, uh, the state for poor people is giving you a tent. I always wondered why so many people lived in tents that are homeless. Tents are expensive, but it's cheaper to give a person a tent than figure out affordable housing. So, in a sense, and I know I'm off on a bit of a tangent here, giving the homeless tents is the way to cope with homeless populations. If you just fill up your whole city with tents, it's a lot easier than dealing with people who are just laying on the sidewalk. And I believe me, I've come across a lot of homeless people just laying on the sidewalk, face into the ground where they're sleeping on the sidewalk. And rather than have that, the government or agencies, whoever gives out tents, allows people to live in tents rather than fixing the problem. And to me, that's the same solution with low wages. We can't do anything about it, so why don't you just be grateful that you have a tent and that your job puts you in that tent? Because one leads to the other. Low wages, crap opportunities, no chance of advancement, no obvious ladder to climb out of poverty means you're going to go from being grateful to having any work. Because remember, it's a right to have steady employment. And I'll tell you this, today while I was leaving the gym, I got a call from the salon, and they told me that the lady that I had my appointment with had to be fired again today. And they have done this to me over and over and over again. And I was yelling at this lady. I was angry at this lady, at the business owner of this place. And do you know why that person got fired? Because they don't make enough money to survive. This person doesn't care about their schedule. This is what corporations do. They schedule you for work, and they don't care what days, what times you're opening, you're closing, and they're not paying you anything on top of it. So you're unable to have more than one job. So the person becomes demoralized because you're not paying them anything. They don't have regular work, and then they fire you because of your lack of loyalty to that company. And I've been experiencing this myself my entire life, and I've been watching other people get fired as well for this same reason. The crap wages don't pay your bills, and yet they want loyalty from those same workers. It's like, we're going to pay you garbage, but you better be loyal, because the second you're not loyal, we're going to fire the crap out of you, and then you're done. What do you think that person did today when they found out that they just got fired? They had to figure it out. That's what we all have to do. It's like the government and the corporations like, well, we can't. There's no way that we can pay living wages, so you're just going to have to figure it out. And this goes for all generations, not just Gen Z. So talking point number 2, why questioning the system is revolutionary. Gen Z's refusal to blindly accept societal norms like grind culture and loyalty to exploitative workforces. It's always about control. The exploitation in the workplace is baked right into the system and has been for a long time. This country was built on plantations and the rich exploiting the poor. If you came over here from England as an indentured servant's a very fancy word for slave, because you had no opportunity in the country you came from, because it was the same thing you have here. You have the very rich, and then you have slaves. And that's what the 99% have become to America. We're just a slave workforce. And you know you're disposable. Because this morning when that business owner called me to tell me that they were firing the person that I was supposed to see this weekend, it wasn't about fairness. It was about firing a slave that wasn't reliable. And to that slave, they come to work in a system where when you sell your labor, you're hoping to make enough money to live off of it. That's the understanding that you have with a person that's going to employ you. But we don't have that. I don't have that. And on top of not paying me enough to live off, you're also going to somehow guilt trip me into believing that exploitation will lead to somewhere good for me. I know better than that. You know I know better than that. And I'm going to keep bringing up this question because you guys know that you've had to answer this question before. And it goes to show my point. Why do you want to work here? Well, I want to waste 8 hours of my day in a job that doesn't pay my bills, and I have to pretend to smile all day long because I need to keep this job. That's the situation that we're in when you go to any job interview. Because the last thing that they want to hire someone to do is a person that actually has real bills. I was actually telling one of my coworkers this morning that all of my Gen Z workers are miserable at work because they know that this job is no different than working at McDonald's. But what happens when every job for the 99% becomes working at McDonald's? Unreasonable pay, unreasonable hours, no possibility of breaking out of poverty. That's every job. And if I hadn't spent my whole life living it, I wouldn't be telling you this right now. But every job is working at McDonald's because they don't believe in changing a system that's working for rich people. And as long as something is working for rich people, it's great. When it's not working for rich people, guess what? We need to bail out that system. I know for a fact that this country is going to bail out the car makers at the end of this year when they all come to the government and say, because of our unfair business models, just like the financial industry crashed in 2008, the car companies are going to do the same thing. Just like the airline companies, just like any large corporation is just going to come up to the government and say, we need a handout. But guess what? Handouts are great for the wealthy, for the entire car industry that has priced out most of their customers out of their product. I couldn't imagine the entire fast food industry going to the government and saying, well, it's not our fault that the people who we expected to keep us afloat by buying our product can't afford to buy it. The car companies are in the same boat. Those idiots in the proletariat aren't making sufficient money to buy our products, so we're going to fail unless you bail us out. Same thing again, as I said, with the airlines. Every large corporation is going to expect for a bailout, but the proletariat doesn't get a bailout. The proletariat gets minimum wage, and then you're expected to like it. So, moving on to my next talking point, the cost of believing the lies. Consequences of chasing outdated ideals such as mental health crises, physical exhaustion, and financial insecurity. So, the consequences of chasing outdated ideals are that you can keep chasing them for the rest of your life. I have. When I was telling my coworker this morning that I'm tired of living this way, of having such a low standard of life. And she's one of these people that truly does believe in the system. She has that story that she tells me all the time. It's like, when me and my husband lost our jobs during 2008, we had to move back into my parents' house and we had to work our way up. And I'm like, that doesn't work anymore. The jobs don't want people who are going to work themselves up. They want desperation workers believing crazy ideas. And the mental health crisis in this country is absolutely not being reported accurately. The mental health crisis in this company has reached a breaking point. It is beyond a crisis. It is to the point where you have people who are sitting in jobs who think that they're the only ones who aren't making it. But the reality is that we're all not making it, and we're physically exhausted. And the financial insecurity that we experience every single day is destroying us. I can't go to bed one single night without wondering if I'm going to have work in the morning. Because too many times I've woken up, gone to work, and realized that they'd already made that decision to fire me 6 months ago. That decision's already been made. But they let you linger on while they figure out when's a good time to make certain that they make you leave. And you're just kind of like, you sit there and you wonder and you wonder. Like the last two girls that I've known that worked in salons that got fired, they knew it was coming. There was no way that they didn't know. And their financial security was always in doubt. When you're making under $20 an hour, you do not have any kind of financial security. Even if you're working full time and you're a good worker, you have no financial security because it's not enough money in order for you to survive on. Sure, you may scrape by for a while, but eventually something's going to happen. You're going to have to fix your car. You're going to have a medical bill that shows up. You're going to have to pay for more overpriced groceries that you can't afford. Something's going to happen, and the consequences of that happening are you losing everything. I feel it every single day, and Gen Z is well aware that this system is waiting for them to give up. The great thing about Gen Z is that their generation is trying to do something about it. What they can do is a strike, a just stop working mentality. Eventually, when enough people stop working and stop believing in the BS, things will change. But as long as they can string you along for a lifetime chasing the carrot while hitting you with the stick, they win. And so far, I see them winning all the way to the bank.